They tried to keep it quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in secure phone lines and sealed envelopes, because some journeys are too serious for trumpets. A car door closes in London, a plane lifts through a curtain of cloud, and somewhere over Europe a single itinerary becomes a message: the Princess Royal is going to Ukraine. No fanfare, no glossy pool camera, no ceremonial carpet rolled out for the lenses. Just duty, compressed into a day so dense the minutes leave fingerprints. By nightfall, the whispers will turn into headlines. By then, the work will already be done. This is how Princess Anne prefers it: arrive, see what matters, say what counts, leave the place a fraction stronger than she found it. And this time the cargo is heavier than protocol. It is a small toy bear, one that once rode in the hands of a little girl named Zara, and it is about to become a symbol a whole country understands without translation. Kiev breathes differently when you know what it has endured. Sirens that taught sleep to be a luxury. Streets that learned resilience the hard way. And yet when the princess steps into the bright cold of the capital, it isn't the choreography of ceremony that moves the day forward, it's the momentum of purpose. This was not a ribbon cutting, this was a covert assignment at the explicit request of the British government, engineered to be swift, safe, and surgically impactful. For months the Princess Royal has been the crown's metronome, never showy, always steady. In Ukraine, that steadiness becomes a kind of weapon, empathy deployed with military precision. Children first. Always children. She has spent decades inside charities where quiet work saves loud lives. Now she brings that grammar to a country that needs both help and witnesses. The meeting with President Zelensky is brief only in runtime. In significance, it stretches across continents. He greets her with the welcome of a man who doesn't have minutes to spare and still makes them. "You're very welcome," he says, and it isn't theater, it's gratitude sharpened by reality. "You're very kind," and answers, with the dry warmth that has disarmed generals and gossips alike. "I don't know how you have time to spare, but there you go." There is laughter, because sometimes humor is the only way to stop a room from drowning. Then the business begins: what is needed this week, what will be needed next winter, where support can be targeted so it lands like medicine and not like a press release. It is diplomacy without the fluff, 2 professionals, 2 notepads, the unspoken understanding that promises only matter if they survive tomorrow. Then there is St. Sophia's Cathedral, where history breathes through mosaic and light and tells you a country's soul is older than any war. To walk those floors with a head of state is to say you see the fight not only in trenches but in memory. Cultures are attacked when missiles fail, identity is the last line. Anne knows this. She has made a career out of noticing what other royals merely admire. She does not pose for the camera, she reads the place like a brief, asks questions that sound simple and land complicated: restoration schedules, safeguarding plans, the paper-thin line between heritage visited and heritage vandalized. By the time she leaves, St. Sophia has become more than a backdrop. It is a witness and a vow: this will stand. But the day's center of gravity is not marble, it is a memorial. The names are too many, the toys too small, and the silence too loud. Here the Princess Royal meets the First Lady, Alina Zelenska, 2 women who learned the same truth from different lives. Leadership is sometimes just the ability to stand at the right place and refuse to look away. Together they lay flowers, and then comes the gesture that drags the breath out of the watching crowd. And sets down a little bear, once gripped by her daughter Zara's hands, now offered to strangers whose grief she can't fix but refuses to ignore. No speech, no flourish. Just a mother and grandmother giving the only thing that carries more meaning than a signature, the trace of her own family folded into someone else's loss. You do not need to speak Ukrainian to understand that language. Everywhere, mothers recognize the weight of a toy that's still warm from another home. From there, the itinerary tightens. A child protection center where trauma has to be threaded before it tangles a life beyond repair. You can see it in the princess's face when she sits at small tables and listens to big stories: the calculus of early intervention, the shortage of counselors, the miracle of one consistent adult in a week filled with moving parts. She does what Anne always does: she asks for numbers, not adjectives. How many therapists? How many sessions? What does expansion look like? How do we help without making it harder? The staff don't give her slogans, they give her lists. That's why she's here. There's the Kherson Cultural Exhibition next, stolen manuscripts rescued, canvases hidden in basements, music taught softly so explosions don't interrupt the cadence. It would be easy to call this symbolic, as if art were an optional luxury postponed until peace. It isn't. Identity is an artery. You cut it, the body goes cold. And questions are again practical: insurance schemes, storage conditions, digital duplicates, the relay teams of volunteers who move treasures at night. For a woman mocked for years as no-nonsense, the Princess Royal has a talent for defending things that make sense only when you remember what a nation is. Then the Rehabilitation Center, where war makes its final demand, not just survival, but the slow, stubborn business of coming back. The princess sits with veterans whose courage is visible in the way they hold themselves, and then, more quietly, in the way their hands tremble when they reach for a cup. She watches therapy sessions because she knows the cameras will not. She learns the vocabulary that fixes broken bodies and soothes angry nights, prosthetics and phantom pain, EMDR, and the miracle of remembering without reliving. For every medal there is paperwork, for every scar there is a plan, and for every plan there is a budget someone has to defend. And does not bring platitudes, she brings attention, the kind that pulls money behind it without anyone having to beg. All of it happens under a cloak of secrecy ripped away only after the wheels leave Ukrainian tarmac. Security demanded it, effectiveness requires it. And yes, the timing matters. 2 weeks earlier, Prince Harry made his own discreet visit, the veteran prince returning to a country where his Invictus Creed isn't an event but a daily reality. Different missions, same drum. One focuses on wounded soldiers, the other on wounded childhoods. Both say the quiet part out loud: Britain's solidarity is not seasonal and not performative. For a family accused of being a soap opera in crowns, this twin rhythm reads like strategy. When one Windsor leaves, another arrives. The flag does not need to be waved if the work is visible. You can already hear the cynics rehearse their lines: what can a princess change in a single day? But that is the trick about days like these: if they are crafted well, they become multipliers. A meeting with a president means a briefing moves faster through ministries. A photograph in a cathedral means a grant proposal lands on a CEO's desk with a new urgency. A bear laid on a memorial means a donor wiring funds in Manchester or Melbourne remembers why they opened the page in the first place. A quiet conversation in a rehab ward means a supplier prioritizes a shipment because someone bothered to ask when it would arrive. Influence is only ridiculous until it works. By evening, the motorcade is shrinking in the rearview. By dawn, the princess is back inside the life that made this possible: paper-stacked desks, early trains, the soft tyranny of a diary that never empties. There will be no glossy sit-down interview bragging about what was seen. There will be a page in a court circular and a few lines that barely cover the ground she crossed. That is the insignature: remove yourself from the headline and make room for the thing that matters to take it. If influence is to be trusted, it must learn how to vanish after the job is done. And yet the echoes stay. In Kiev, a councillor will quote the British princess in a grant appeal because it moves a hesitant hand toward approve. In London, a policy aide will scribble a note that the child trauma intake at Centre X needs surge funding before winter. In Warsaw and Ottawa, ambassadors will triangulate a follow-up visit from the type of donor who prefers to travel quietly but writes loudly. This is how soft power does hard work. It doesn't replace soldiers, it gives them families worth returning to. The bear. It will sit for a while among the other tokens of a grief too large for the shelf, then it will be carried into a school talk, a hospital corridor, a training session where new staff learn that symbolic acts aren't decoration but oxygen. Somewhere a mother will touch it and think of another mother who gave it away deliberately, as if to prove that love can be transferred without reducing. Somewhere a child will hold it for a minute, and that minute will be won without fear. You cannot measure that on a spreadsheet. You can measure what happens because of it. None of this erases the risk, the sorrow, the grotesque arithmetic of war that turns birthdays into numbers and maps into wounds. But for one day, under a quiet sky and behind strong doors, a woman who has spent a career choosing the useful over the shiny chose Ukraine. And Ukraine noticed. The president did not waste the moment. The first lady did not let the silence pass unfilled. The veterans did not hide the hard parts. The curators did not apologize for beauty. The counselors did not tone down the need. The princess did not pretend that presence is enough, she paired it with questions that drag help toward results. When people say the monarchy must prove its relevance, this is what they mean, though they seldom say it so plainly. Turn privilege into pressure on the right levers, turn attention into outcomes, turn a surname into a door code. Do it without self-congratulation. Do it again. Disappear. Repeat. That is why the secrecy mattered. That is why the schedule was brutal. That is why the story, when it finally surfaced, arrived as a finished sentence instead of a promise. Back home, the news cycle will pivot to other storms, as it always does. But some images cling. A small bear resting where no bear should have to rest. A president smiling for 30 seconds in a week that does not offer many. A princess with the posture of someone who understands that enough is a word you never get to use in this line of work. A country that will remember who came when it counted. And a crown that, for all its antique edges, still knows how to be modern in the only way that matters, by showing up where the world hurts and leaving behind something more useful than a headline.